Everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. As you're joining us, I do want to note that in the bottom of your screen, you'll see an interpretation logo. It looks like a little world. If you click on that, you can select your channel, English or Spanish, and you will be able to hear either us speaking in English or at the same time our wonderful interpreters here, and she will be translating us at the same time in Spanish. So please feel free to go ahead and sign into your preferred language. We also wanted to let you know that this is being recorded, and once this is done, we will be sending it out to everyone along with the slides. And in the slides, there's a couple of forms that will ask some of you to fill out, so you can click directly on the slides once you get them in the email. We also wanted to let you know that at the end, we're going to have a Q&A, and you'll also see a button in the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. Please put any questions you have there. We may answer some questions during the presentation by typing, and then there'll be other questions that we'll just speak about live at the end. So those are just some introductory remarks. Again, I just want to remind those that would prefer to hear this in Spanish, just click on the globe that says interpretation at the bottom of the screen, and you can select your language. We will take questions as well in Spanish or in English. With that said, we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Audrey Menard. I'm the head of school for ISP, and I'm being joined today by our high school principal, Mark Ketterhagen, and our middle school principal, Kyle Martin. And we're really happy to be here today to talk about our exciting opportunity to bring all of our students back, and that includes the middle and high school. Next slide, please. So we want to just start by saying welcome. Welcome back to school. Starting on Monday, we are ready for you. We want to thank everybody that has been complying with the ISP pledge. To date, we have not had to close classrooms in the middle school or high school because students and families are following the pledge. To date, we've had 0 on-campus student transmissions. While we have had a few cases, positive cases, our biosecurity protocols are working because they have not passed to any students on campus. And we will go through our biosecurity protocol shortly because it really is important that we continue to follow this even though we have all students back on campus. And I also want to let you know that our community vaccination numbers are on the rise. Not only do we have all the staff that wanted to be vaccinated have been vaccinated, I have a huge number of high school students that are vaccinated and a large number of middle school students that are vaccinated. So we're excited about that. But at the same time, we must remember in the elementary school, we have lots of students that are not old enough to be vaccinated, and vaccinated students still can be carriers. And with the Delta strain, out there, we still need to be really careful to take care of our more vulnerable students in the lower school. So again, I really ask that you help us with the pledge and following that. Next slide, please. Thank you, Liz. And then I just want to excitedly remind you the arduous road that we have been on to leading to this exciting news. So only a little more than a year ago, March 8th, we were able to kick off our program. Not even a year ago, what am I saying? Not March 8th, we kicked off the program. We were able to bring a few students back to school on campus. We were so excited to have students on campus. And after that trial, I welcome back another wave of students, and it was just so exciting. And then Maduka came, and boy, we've been through every inspection on the face of the planet, and they ruled that we were one of the first schools in the country to receive their SAFE certification on April 28th, which allowed us to move forward from there and have semi-presential instruction. We got our faculty, and actually all of our frontline workers and our operations staff also received vaccination. So, and I don't know of any other school, or maybe 1 or 2 other schools, that were able to get the entire faculty and staff vaccinated. So we're excited to do that. May 31st, we were able to extend to a full day of school, including Fridays. So we were able to prep for this year to get ready for what that looked like. And then this school year rolled out and we were able to find space to bring all of the elementary students back. And now, thanks to a lot of hard work and lobbying, the government did decide to shrink back our social distancing measures to 1 meter. And as a result of that, we are able to bring everyone back to school starting Monday. And so with that, exciting news, I'm going to kick it over to the principals so they could talk about what this is going to look like.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Menard. And thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. As I'm sure you know, Mark and I are incredibly excited for this meeting today, because it's a sign that we're finally getting closer to normalcy. We're getting an opportunity to have all of our kids on campus, and we can't wait to get started. Before we obviously dive into the learning, we do want to continue with a few safety protocols, because our number one priority, of course, is the safety of your kids and obviously our kids. And so just a couple quick reminders, some of the non-negotiables from Meduca, the social distancing and the hand washing. You're going to hear a lot of that over the course of this session, because it's so crucial with twice as many kids on campus that every single person does their part. And so social distancing, even with that new 1 meter restriction, is so crucial. We have hand washing stations, as you know, all over the campus. So a lot of opportunities for students to make sure that their hands are clean before lunch, after lunch, in the middle of class, at all times. Anytime a student comes to campus, they do have their temperature checked. We do have a really thoughtfully designed nursing area for students who might be suspected cases. So we have a chance to kind of keep them in isolation to get them home safely, as well as to get their testing done. And face masks is an absolute non-negotiable at almost all times on our campus. The only time, of course, being lunch and snack, which we'll get to in a few moments. So Liz, if you go to the next slide, please. You've seen this, our students have seen this. It is our approach to trying to prevent the spread of this disease on our campus, in our community. As Dr. Menard said, this is not just about us as staff, as older teachers. This is about our entire community, because it's going to impact us all. And so we need to be really, really vigilant with this. And as we prepare to come back on Monday, we need your help in really reinforcing this with your kids. Instead of having one specific mechanism to prevent the spread of this, we have multiple. As Dr. Menard mentioned, vaccination is one additional level to the Swiss cheese model. Cloth masks at all times, the at least 1 meter of social distancing, the reduced occupancy and ventilation, the hand washing, and then the cleaning and disinfecting that our amazing maintenance staff is doing, but also our students are participating in that as well. And so we believe that if we can do all of these things, we're going to continue to make sure that or ensure that our kids are safe when they come to campus. With that in mind, I'm going to send it over to Mark to talk about a few other aspects. Go ahead, Mark.
Kyle, thanks so much. And Liz, if you don't mind switching the slide. So I want to just build on a couple things that Kyle said, and we're so excited to have all students on campus in the high school starting Monday. We can't wait. In order to continue to offer that, there's a few things that are just so important that we want to touch on about the pledge. And that is students should stay at home when anybody at home has COVID symptoms. If they're feeling sick, if they have fevers, students should not come to school. A significant obstacle that could prevent us from continuing to offer in-person school would be confirmed cases at school. So we want to prevent those in every way that we can. So a few reminders: exposure. If a student has exposure or a family member has exposure to confirmed or suspected cases, so anyone in the bubble at home, the school requires a 14-day quarantine. Please follow through on that. If anyone in your bubble has been exposed to confirmed or suspected cases, please stay home in order to keep our community safe. International travel comes with risks. So if a student or anyone in the student's family, or if the family is taking an international trip, follow the CDC protocols. Use the ISP travel form, which is on the website. And just remember, if when you return, 5 days of quarantine followed by a test, and then at school on day 7 if that test is negative, or a 10-day quarantine if you do not test. All of that is on our website, but just remember that it's when we don't follow these that we can really get into trouble with having to quarantine an entire class, a number of classes, an entire division, or even the whole school returning to online, and that could really happen. So we really ask for your support in following these guidelines. Dr. Menard is going to talk to us a little bit more about transportation.
So we have spoken with our 2 bus transportation systems that we recommend, and they still have a number of buses in their fleet that are not in use. So they are more than ready and willing for you to sign up if you want to switch your kids to daily bus rides. They do have space available. So I would encourage you to reach out if you do want to move to daily bus transportation. And as a reminder, to ride the bus, and this is the law, they will get a temperature check before they even get on the bus. If they have any sort of temperature, they will not be allowed to board. They have to wear both a face mask and face shields during the ride. And again, this is the law. Every day they sanitize the bus. It's sanitized before they're on the bus. While they're here at school, after the kids get off, they get on and sanitize the bus again. And then, of course, after the kids are delivered home, they sanitize the bus again. So the buses are very clean. Because of all the craziness, we are not able to accommodate switching or flexible busing at this time. But that is something that we might be able to start to implement in the future, in the near future, hopefully. But at this point, we're still not able to do that because of contact tracing. So with that said, just give the companies a call if you're interested in busing, and they are more than ready to work with you. Thank you.
So Kyle and I are going to talk a little bit about how will school look. And so one of the most important things to know is that our efforts this year have really been focused on trying to have a school look and feel like real in-person school, not school where every student is sitting there and looking at a computer, but school where students are laughing, where they're engaging with their classmates, where they're learning interpersonally and getting to do things that we all think about when we think about the great school that ISP is. There are some things that are a little bit different. There's still social distancing and there's still precautions, but in terms of how will school will look largely in terms of structure as it did prior to the pandemic, with some safety precautions in place. There still will be things like group work, and still students will be able to move around the school and will not be sitting on devices. Carl, anything you want to build about school life at the middle school before we get into specifics?
No, I think that's really well said. The next few slides we'll go through a little bit more about what our priorities are. We've talked a lot about blended learning and universal design for learning, but we'll get in those in just a minute.
Great. Liz, if you could switch the slide then. So as Dr. Menard mentioned, the social distancing guideline for Panama did change from 1.5 meter to 1 meter. So that allows us to have more students in classrooms because we don't have to spread the desks out quite as far, but there still is a social distancing component that's super important. And so some of our classrooms, we have to be careful about where students are seated. And at lunch, especially when students have masks off, we're still really thinking about this. And I can definitely speak for high school students that our students are very happy to see each other, and they love to they want to high five, they want to hug, they want to be near each other. And what we're asking is that they still respect that social distancing space to minimize any risk of transmission here on campus. So this will still be an important message, and we really ask for your partnership and messaging to your children that they should practice social distancing while here on campus. So if you've attended some of the earlier town halls or have been paying attention to some of the things that have been happening around campus, we've tried to clarify what our definition is of learning. And we want to have a really clear picture for what learning looks like for children at our school, so we know when we're achieving it. And there's 4 things that we really think about and we worked on with our entire strategic planning team over the last several months into spring of this past year. And that is learning is iterative, learning is exciting, learning is meaningful, and learning is social. And these are all things we intend for your children to experience as they're back here every day. We want students to be able to learn from mistakes. That's an important part of who we are. at ISP, and the students can learn things and make mistakes and go through that again and discover and experiment. We want classes to be exciting. We want to hear students, I could say, I know at the high school, students are doing experiments, students are doing things that are exciting and new for them. And we know that students learn best when they're inspired and challenged and active. We want learning to be meaningful for students. We want them to work with knowledge and real life situations that are meaningful to them and that are actually in their lives, not just in a textbook. And we know that learning happens through collaboration with each other. So these are things we're really focusing on. And hopefully, as your children describe their learning experiences, these are things that you can see them experiencing on a day-to-day basis.
Great, thanks, Mark. Liz, can you go to the next slide, please? And so some of the logistics and some of the specifics of what on campus looks like, Liz, would you mind going to the next one, please? Is when kids are on campus, our priority is collaboration, connection, and communication. And it's so crucial that we've noticed over the last 18 months, those are the things that kids have missed the most and that we've struggled with the most with this virtual learning. No matter where you are in the world, that has been a struggle for students to find ways to really communicate in the same way as when they're in person. And so that is a top priority. And when your students come to classes over the coming weeks, they'll be doing a lot of that, a lot of computers closed, chart paper out, conversations happening, working in small groups, because those are the things that we know, one, are going to push learning, but two, are so crucial in the development of all of our kids. We're going to continue to clearly document all of our classes in Google Classroom. So if you're a middle school parent or student, in Google Classroom, that's what we use. In high school, they use Canvas, but we're going to continue to maintain that digital spine. So in the event that we need to make a quick pivot, we can do so very seamlessly and continue the learning process. That's also going to be really important for our students who are unable to join us on campus, so they can still access the material and keep progressing with their classmates. We are always, regardless of if we're virtual, if we're in this hybrid or now back on campus, we're really going to continue to focus on meaningful activities. So doing things because it's meaningful, it's authentic, it's connected to the real world, because we know what engages students, and we know that that's when they learn the best. The final one that we're going to continue to prioritize is very clear expectations and documenting those expectations, as well as giving consistent feedback. And so now that we have students back on campus, we are so excited to continue those conferences, those small group meetings where we can give students, we can look at a rubric together, look at a piece of writing, and really give that concrete feedback so that your student knows where they are in the learning process. If you go to the next slide, please, Liz. Even though there's sometimes a common misconception that blended learning, which we've talked about a lot over the last years, is only when we're remote or only when we're in this hybrid mode. But in reality, it is going to continue, and it's going to continue for many, many years to come at ISP because it's great teaching. And so these are three models that you've probably heard a lot about, you're going to continue to hear a lot of, is flipped classroom. And so that's one model where instead of lecturing in class, we're prioritizing that time to collaborate. So maybe a student watches a lecture in advance, and then they have a chance to come into the classroom and really work with their classmates and grapple with a problem to solve it. Playlists is another one that's really, really popular, that students have this array of choices to access the material, and they make choices along the way about what interests them the most, how they can best access the material, and then also how they can show their learning. And the last one is station rotation, which is great, where a teacher maybe works with a small group of students while another group is working collaboratively on something, while a third group is working maybe independently on their computer. And then over the course of the lesson, they rotate around. And so these are models you're going to hear a lot about, but we just want to make sure you know that they're going to continue to happen even if we're not in this hybrid situation. Next slide, please. A few items that we have in place in the middle school, and I know Mark's going to talk a little bit about high school because they're certainly slightly different animals, so to speak. We're going to be staggering our lunch to ensure social distancing. And so lunch and break are two crucial times in the middle school and in high school, because students will have their masks off. And so we're going to take this incredibly seriously, and we need your help in working with your child to make sure they're ready to take it seriously, so that we can have even more social distancing in class with with masks on. 1 meter is certainly sufficient. When we're eating, it's really important that we try to extend that to maybe 1.5 meters or 2. And so in the middle school, for the first 20 minutes of lunch, our 6th graders will be eating in the turf field bleachers. So the bleachers by the beautiful soccer stadium that we have, while the 7th graders on the tennis courts. At that time, the 8th graders will have a chance to socialize, to play soccer, to walk around, to play ping pong, whatever it is they might want to do. And then we'll switch. And again, the purpose of this is to make sure that we have as much social distancing as we possibly can. We're excited that our cafeteria is opening in a month or so, but for now, this is our plan. There are microwaves available. And so if your child does have something they want to heat up, they can certainly bring that. And we definitely encourage healthy choices. We know that if lunch is at 11:20 and they're going to be here until 2:30 or even later with athletics, it is so crucial that they're fueling their body with the right things. Liz, can you go to the next one, please? You've also seen this one before. We're going to maintain the same schedule. So students will, of course, have 4 blocks in a given day. You can see the times of those are on the right side, the roughly 70-minute classes, as well as an advisory and or a win block. We will be shifting our schedule so that we're not repeating days anymore. And so with our cohort days, we say day one, day two, day 3, to make sure that all students had a chance to access the lesson live in person. Starting on Monday, we're going to just progress normally. So Monday will be day 1, Tuesday will be day 2, Wednesday will be day 3, and so forth. And I can assure you, before you frantically try to scribble and write something down, we'll be sending this out so you have all of the information you and your child need to be successful. Mark, is there anything you want to add from a high school standpoint about lunch and or just the schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. So until the cafeteria opens, we're going to continue life or lunch as it's been going. And most high school students who have been on campus are really familiar with this. So students can eat lunch in several different places, either on the courts, on the bleachers, or in the breezeway. And those are the 3 spots that students are going to. And they seem very used to that protocol. We'll have a slightly adjusted and staggered lunch period once that cafeteria does open. But for now, high school students will be directed to one of those 3 places. We should just note that there are 2 microwaves available, but because we're outside, we don't have that many available. So it might be easier for students to not bring their lunch that has to be reheated. They might have to wait in line a little bit. So those are the only differences to note for high school. So I just want to make sure that we speak to what would happen in the event of a positive case on our campus. So communication would happen with all close contacts, and there are Meduca regulations that we must follow. So a close contact would be anyone in the same classroom as that student, the entire classroom. And when that happens, the Meduca guidelines are that there is a mandatory 14-day quarantine for those close contacts. I think the question is in the chat, so I can just address it verbally now. That's not our call. That is a Meduca regulation that we are forced to comply with. And then all of those students would temporarily transition to virtual learning. That is not ideal. From a high school perspective, a student goes to 5 classes per day, typically. So if a student were to test positive for COVID and come to school, that would be 5 classrooms of students, all of whom would need to stay at home for 14 days, which is a long time. And that's a lot of students. And so for those reasons, we are really asking for your help in 2 ways. To 1, please keep your students at home if they are feeling sick or anyone in the bubble is demonstrating sickness. And number 2, be very, very careful if there's international travel or exposure to people outside the bubble. All of those things increase our risk at school. And we know some of those are natural, but when the students are exposed to more things, when high school students are allowed to have a bunch of friends over for a sleepover, when a family goes on an international trip, all of those things increase our risk. And so we really need your help in minimizing risk as much as possible. And also really messaging to your students to social distance in the lunchroom and minimize any chance of on-campus transmission. So we're truly asking for your help on that because we want to stay open for every single student every single day, and we need your help to achieve that.
Can I go to the next slide, please, Liz? And there are a few questions in the chat about this as well. And so we want to try to norm it as much as we can. If your child is virtual only, so they're not coming to campus at this point due to potential health concerns, maybe you're out of the country, maybe you're in the country, but for some reason you're not able to come to campus at this time, we would like you and need you to fill out a form that just provides us with a little bit more information so that we can design a program for your child. And it is so crucial that you fill that out so that we can make sure that everything is tailored to meet the needs of your child. And so at this time, we're not mandating that all students come back. We're encouraging it, and we think that it's a great choice for most kids, or for all kids. But if you opt not to or can't for whatever reason, it is crucial that you fill out this form. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time in this specific session going through what that virtual only program will look like, but it is very important you fill it out so that we can then reach out to you with a lot more details about what that will look like for your child. So accompanying this presentation at the end of this, if you can't click on the link, which I don't think you can, we'll be sending out those forms. And so we just ask again, please fill that out. One key part, and again, I think this is one of the questions in the chat, this is specifically for students who have health-related concerns or are not able to get to ISP or Panama. So for example, if you're in the United States, if you're in South Korea and you're not able to get to Panama yet for whatever reason, this program is for you. This is not designed for people who are going to the beach a day or two early, or who are maybe starting their winter holiday early. That was an option, and that was one of the small benefits of the virtual only world, that you could do that. You are no longer able to do that and still access the material. And so it's really, really crucial when we think about what we need from you as parents, is a commitment, if your child's coming to campus, that they're here every day, of course, that they're healthy, and that you're supporting us by not maybe taking a vacation in the middle of our quarter. If you opt to do that, it will likely be very similar to like back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago, when we of course still have work provided. There's still opportunities for your child to access the material, but it's gonna be almost entirely asynchronous and at their own pace. And so we really need that commitment from you that if we're gonna make this work, we need your child here every single day. And that's just something that's really crucial. The only exception to this would be if for whatever reason, a child is quarantined. And so maybe if a parent tests positive in the house and a child is quarantined, we would also, of course, offer this virtual only option, but it's not going to be for vacations or leaving to the beach a few days early, any of the above. And I know that sounds negative, and that's not the intent. I hope you know we love every single one of you and we want you to be here, but we just want to make that really, really clear of what that expectation is. If you don't mind going to the next one, Liz. And I think actually back to you, Mark.
So there's a few things that can be done at home that help our mission here. So remind children of the biosecurity expectations and follow the ISP pledge. I can tell you that high school students push back on social distancing when they're at school. They don't like to do it, and they don't like to keep their masks on. And so we really need your help in reminding them that they really need to do that in order to be able to go to school every day. You can really support your child's education by making sure that they're here every day. It is super disruptive when students come some days and then go on a vacation and come back. And it's very difficult for the teachers to understand when students are going to be here. So we're asking for a commitment to send your students every day so the teachers can understand who will be in their classroom and make sure they have instruction prepared for them. Encourage your child to advocate for themselves. So if they're struggling, they need something, we need to hear from them. And then a few high school things and a few middle school things. High school students, parents of high school students, please tell them to check their email, which they sometimes do not do. And please tell them to read the Daily Dolphin Bulletin that always has the schedule in it and always has which classes we have. And I think the similar type of behaviors for you to reinforce are true in the middle school, to really pay attention to the week at a glance and to their Google Classroom.
And if I'm not mistaken, we'll then take a couple questions. So Liz, I don't know if you want to facilitate this or if you'd like me to. What would you prefer?
I am glad to help. So our first question, Audrey has marked to respond, and it says, are unvaccinated teachers allowed to enter campus? And if so, why?
Sure, happy to take that one. So in the country of Panama, different countries have different rules and regulations. In the country of Panama, we cannot require our teachers to be vaccinated. If they choose not to be vaccinated, then they have to sign basically a release form saying that if they get ill, they release the school of anything that might happen to them. As far as the students go, they are under the same strict biosecurity protocols as anybody else that comes on campus. They will have their temperature tested. They still have to wear masks. The whole Swiss cheese model still applies to them. If they're showing any symptoms whatsoever, they have to stay home and they can't come back until it's been determined that they do not have COVID. And we don't have the ability to, so in some countries, they're not allowing teachers to come on campus if they weren't vaccinated. That's not the laws of this country. But we do believe that our Swiss cheese model is working because we've had zero, and I'll repeat again, zero transmissions by students since school has started. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Well, what happens to children who travel internationally? Are they going to be able to connect to online classes while they are quarantined or while they're in quarantine from the trip?
So I'll take that one again. I think that that Mr. Ketterhagen and Mr. Martin hit that one, but I'll just reiterate, it just depends. If they've been traveling and they're back in town in time not to miss school, then that's not a problem. But if they are traveling and they've come back late and then the kids have to quarantine, then no, they won't have the online protocol. So we really ask that you pay attention to our school calendar and plan your vacations and travels around the school calendar. It's really difficult for our teachers to plan right now for kids on campus, off campus, depending on quarantine. And then on top of that, to have fully virtual students where we're personalizing them on an individual level, then to add to that students that are just traveling for family personal reasons, it just becomes impossible for our teachers to keep up with all of that and do a good job. So again, if they're traveling and and you're following the school calendar, there shouldn't be any problems with that. So I hope that's clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Audrey. Will after school continue to be divided by alphabetical cohort?
Shall I take that one again? Right now, it will stay that way, but it won't be long before we'll start bringing them together. So just stay tuned for communications from the after school programs, and you'll hear more about that soon.
I see both Mark and Kyle responding to a few of these questions in writing, so I'll just skip and go ahead to what about the siblings of quarantine students due to a case in their classroom?
I'll jump in and maybe take that one. I guess depending on the question. So if it's about how will they have access, will they be able to access their classes? I'm happy to do that. If it's more specific to the tracing and the rules of the quarantine, I might send that to you, Dr. Menard. But that, as we mentioned, is one of the very few exceptions to our virtual only program. And so if you, someone in your family is quarantined due to a positive test, maybe in your immediate bubble, that would be that one exception that we might allow a little bit of flexibility into that virtual program. And so in elementary, I know they're calling them TVOs, temporary virtual only students. The crucial part is that communication. And so that if that is the case and your child or your family is quarantining, it is so crucial that you reach out to the middle school office, to the high school office, to Mark and myself, so that we can communicate with teachers to make sure that they're in the loop about that. As we said, it's not about the trips and the travel, it's specifically that if that is your specific bubble. So I hope that's what your question was, and I interpret that correctly.
If the question is about your sibling, from a contact tracing perspective, we are not counting in contact tracing second level contacts. So basically, if your child was sent home and your child has no symptoms, then the sibling can come to school. However, if your child has symptoms, then any siblings must stay home. So that's but if we start holding back people in second and third contacts, we'll be closing the school down very quickly. So we just, again, need to your help in looking for symptoms. And remember, this is following the Swiss cheese model. And all the best practice we've seen in contact tracing, and it's worked so far. This is the process we've followed, and we've had zero spreading on campus.
There are two questions here that might be related. One is, as far as athletics is concerned, students had their first after-school day when they were at school. How is it going to be now? And they're also asking about how will after-school activities operate from now on?
I'll go ahead and jump in with unless you want to jump in, Dr. Nar, with more information will come on the way. And so that is outside of my expertise, but I'll be happy to talk to Fernando and Kata and the great team we have down there to send some clarification. So we're making a note. You'll get communication soon.
Okay. What if a student travels due to medical needs? Can they connect outside?
I'm happy to take that one as well. I think for those ones, and I think it's Milagros, we'll be happy to talk. So please set up a conversation with either Mark or myself to have a formal communication, and we can get on the same page. And so some of those very specific ones, we're happy to have the conversation. I think our biggest point that I'm sure you can tell, trying to hammer home is that we need kids on campus as much as possible to keep our program moving forward. It's just so crucial to have that. And so please set up a time. We're happy to meet and talk about your specific situation.
Can we have an update about the cafeteria? There are a couple of questions related to timing, approximately when it's going to be opened, and yeah, just some progress on what's going on with the cafeteria.
Sure, I'll be happy to take that. Just had another tour yesterday of the cafeteria, and it looks so good. We are on track, and even more importantly, we are on budget. We haven't even gone into the contingency fund, which is almost unheard of in building projects, at least in my experience. So I have to say, you're going to love what you see, and it will be ready very soon. The little hiccup we have right now is that the furniture for the cafeteria is stuck in the US, and we have just heard the latest that it may not be here until October. So we're working very hard on contingency planning, and we're hoping that we'll be either, first of all, we'll get the occupancy permit shortly in early September, and that allows our chef Halil and his team to move into the kitchen and start working from the kitchen. So then we can serve foods from there and still have the kids eat outside the cafeteria, or we're exploring ways to maybe rent some cafeteria furniture or whatnot to be able to get the kids in until the furniture arrives from the US. So that's the closest update that I could give you. But for the construction itself, it's on track and we're going to finish on time. It's the furniture now that's giving us a hard time, but stay tuned. We'll have more information soon.
The next question is about hybrid learning. Some parents don't feel comfortable sending their children every day and are questioning if there's an option where they can attend twice a week as it is right now.
I'll jump in on this. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'll speak to this from an instructional point of view that as someone who taught for 10 years, that's really difficult. So just remember what teachers are being asked to do right now is that they're being asked to double plan instruction for students in the classroom as well as students who are not coming to the classroom. And then that would add a third layer where they're supposed to prepare for students who are there every other day. And I can tell you as someone who taught high school, that's really hard. And so we're asking for everyone to commit to sending students as frequently as possible, as long as it's safe. And that will make for better experiences for students as well as for teachers. We are going to do, as we've done throughout the pandemic, our teachers are bending over backwards to try and reach every student in every way that they can. But it's much easier to have students who are at campus on a predictable and everyday rotation. And that's what we're hoping our teachers will be able to deliver so they can deliver the best quality education possible.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry, Elizabeth, just to be as definitive as we can, I would say no. Like, we need kids to be on campus, or you opt for the fully virtual. But just for the benefit of your student, as well as the instructional plan that we're trying to create, it is crucial that it's here on campus every day that you're healthy and well, or fully virtual.
So for a student who is in direct contact with someone outside the home bubble and they're being kept at home while testing days pass, will they have access to the virtual program?
You'll forgive me. I was typing an answer and missed the first part of that. Could you repeat it one more time, Liz? My bad.
So if a student is a direct contact to someone outside the home bubble and we are keeping them at home while testing days pass, will they have access to the virtual program?
So they would fall into that temporary virtual only status. Again, it's the communication just has to be really, really explicit. And so we'd encourage you, if that is the case, to set up a meeting with Mark or I so that we can have come with a plan.
If a child on a bus tests positive, oh, that disappeared, I think. I think Mikhail might have answered it. Well, would it be the same protocol if a child is sharing a bus with someone who's tested positive? Will they quarantine as well?
The buses, I'll take this one. I don't know why Maduka did things this way, but they have a different protocol for buses than they have for classrooms. With classrooms, we have to send the kids home for 14 days if there's a positive case, period. It's not negotiable. For the buses, on the other hand, they don't have a direct policy. So we're following the same procedure we did last spring, where if there's a direct contact, they go home after 5 days, they are tested. And if they test negatively, then they're able to come back, providing they're not showing any symptoms as well. But so the buses have a different protocol. That's the one we wish we could use for all students, but the classes, they're very clear. The whole class goes home for 14 days.
Thank you. Does drop off and pickup change somehow?
And so obviously that'll depend a lot on how you get to school. And so as Dr. Menard mentioned early on, if you end up taking a bus, it's really important you get in conversations with them right away to figure out the bus route and the schedule and the timing of that. From our end of things, the schedule will of course remain the same. We anticipate, because there are more students coming to campus, that it'll likely be more bus students maybe than we had in, for example, May of last school year. But our procedure on our end will be the exact same in terms of timing. It'll just be more of a conversation with the transportation company.
Also, for those students or those families who are arriving on campus by their own means, there are resources on the link that I've already shared with everyone. There are resources about drop off and pick up. There was a slight change. I'm not very sure of where it was, but it is beautifully filmed there, and you'll be able to see what the changes were for either middle school or high school. Are we planning to send another vaccination survey to obtain more updated results?
Presently, no, we aren't planning to do that. The reason we did the survey was, again, we were lobbying Mensa and Maduka and other government officials to allow us to reduce the spacing to 1 meter. Now that we've achieved that, there really isn't a reason to continue to collect that data. It's also considered very personal and anonymous. And so unless we have a good reason to gather that information, we won't. We're not changing our biosecurity protocols at all based on vaccinations. And again, we have a large portion of our student body that isn't even eligible for vaccinations. So we really have to continue to behave as if no one was. Thank you.
If there is a positive case in a class, would teachers also have to quarantine for 14 days at home?
Shall I take that one again? The teachers do not have to follow the same protocols as the students. So the teacher will go home and work from home. But if they are able to test again after 5 days and show a negative result, they can come back to school and teach from school. But they're going to be committed, no matter what, to teaching that class for 14 days. So whether they're teaching from home or they're teaching from the work, they're still teaching all the kids in that class that are at home for the quarantine.
So we're down to our last two questions, and just want to reinforce the point of vaccination. So the quarantine will remain at 14 days or 7 to 10 days if there's a negative test when international travel takes place, regardless of the student and family members being fully vaccinated.
I'm
Kyle?
Liz, I'm not sure if that's a question so much as they're just reinforcing that vaccination is beneficial. I'm not, or maybe I'm missing the question.
I think the question is if quarantine will remain 14 days or 7 to 10 days if they can present a negative test.
So this goes back to the, if you've been travel, this goes back to the CDC guidelines. This is why we have a link that we send you to there. Go to the CDC because every day it seems like they change these regulations. And so I believe today what the situation is that if you're vaccinated and you've traveled, then you need to come back and on the third day, take a PCR test. And if it's negative, you may come back technically on day 5. That's what the CDC guidelines say today, but we can't give you a answer to that question that's consistent because the guidelines have been changing. So just go to the CDC website and look at when you travel and see what they say and follow that at that time.
Well, that's it for me for the questions. We've answered 44 of our middle school and high school questions for this meeting.
And so just to close up and say thank you everyone for attending today. We will again send this presentation out with the links. So if you are a full-time online learner, you can fill out the forms for the high school or the middle school so we can reach out and design your program. And then we also will have the video recording of this so that you can rewatch it or share it with someone if you didn't see it. We are so excited that the students are going to be back on Monday. That's the biggest message I hope that you hear. And we'll be a whole lot closer to being able to give you an even better education like we were able to do before the pandemic, but even better now because we've got the blended learning piece added in. So I don't know, Kyle or Mark, you want to have any parting words?
We're excited to see all your students on Monday. I hope we just have a massive % of our students attending every day. We want to see your children in person, so please help us do that.